Hey folks, I'm Mark Ryan. This is Super Review, and this is the Meze 109 Pro. This is a gorgeous open back dynamic driver headphone coming in at around 800 bucks. And if I'm perfectly honest with you, I am super biased for this headphone. Going into Can Jam last month, basically based purely on the aesthetic of this headphone and a little bit my acquired taste of the 99 Classics, I went into Can Jam really hoping to listen to and love this headphone. But if I'm perfectly honest, just based on my early preliminary listening impressions, I was kind of disappointed. And I got back home, I emailed Meze, I gave them some pretty blunt feedback to be honest, but credit to them, they still sent in the 109 Pro for review. So for the past few weeks, I've been listening to this headphone and really trying to find a way, with an open mind and my bias, trying to find a way, can I love this headphone? Did I succeed? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. So like all my other reviews, this is a live stream. If you're here now live, how's it going? Happy Wednesday? I actually forgot. But anyway, how's it going? Stick around through the video. At the end of the review, we'll have some time for some back and forth conversation. But for now, what we're going to do is we're going to dive into the table. We'll talk about the build quality on the 109 Pro. We'll talk about then the sound, talk about the sound signature, what I like, what I don't like, and then how it compares to another headphone in this price range that I think some people might be interested in cross-shopping against the 109 Pro. With that out of the way, shout out again to Meze for sending this in for review. I do have them linked in the description down below if you want to check them out. But with that out of the way, let's jump to the table and start talking about the build and what comes inside the box here with the 109 Pro. Now, I don't have the box here on the table because it's quite large. I did an unboxing a few weeks ago if you want to check that out. But this is what you get inside the box. We'll start here, first of all, with this carry case. And like pretty much all of Meze's headphones, they come with these really pretty fantastic carry cases. It's maybe a little bit on the large side, right? If you're used to something like a Sony XM3 carry case, this is much larger than that because the headphone itself is larger, but it is otherwise, all intents and purposes, frankly, appropriately sized and certainly more compact than something like what Odyssey gives you. But it's got a nice felt padding on the inside, hard carry case on the outside, and then pretty heavy duty zippers all around. But that is the case is about as much as I could probably tell you about that. Let's talk now about the cable, actually, before we get into talking about the headphone. And it does come with two cables. One of them is this one. I think this is probably about 10 foot long. And to be frank, I did not use this because I'm not a big fan of long cables. But fortunately, it does also come with a 4-foot cable in the box. And that is my ideal. Now, both of these terminate in 3.5 millimeters. As I put this thing back in the box, although you can see that they do come with a 3.5 to 6.3 millimeter adapter for folks that are hooking that up to a bigger stereo set. But again, I mostly just use this small cable, which I appreciate having a nice 4-foot cable. Let's see, what can we say about this cable? Now, I will say I am continuously surprised, frankly, at how bad some hi-fi manufacturers continue to get cables wrong. And this one, I would say, is definitely not wrong. This is a decent cable, but it's not great, all right? Let's start with the good stuff. I think aesthetically it looks nice, and maybe it's not a whole lot to see here on the screen, but it is a good-looking, simple cable, right? You've got simple Meze branding on it. You've got a nice little Y split up here, and then it terminates into 3.5 on the end that goes into your source, and then two 3.5 millimeter connectors that plug into the headphone itself. Now, behavior-wise, I'll be honest, this is a little bit on the stiff and springy side, as you might be seeing. It is, it's not the nicest cable, but I don't have many complaints about it. And frankly, like, I was pretty comfortable just maining this cable. A lot of the times I will swap cables on headphones because the cable annoys me. This one was perfectly fine. Again, a little bit on the springy side, but in my opinion, this is pretty serviceable. The other thing maybe worth calling out too is that it did seem like it was a little bit microphonic, probably partly due to how stiff and kind of springy it is, but I didn't find the microphonics on headphones in general to be nearly as bad as microphonics can be with IEMs. So frankly, it didn't really bother me. But let's put that aside and bring in the star of the show, the temptress that has got me so super biased for this headphone, and that is the headphone itself. I don't know what to say that I haven't already said before. I love the way that this thing looks. But beyond just looking good, I think the materials, the build quality and stuff on here is also really nice and high quality stuff that frankly I've come to expect of Meze. So you've got wood cups around here, and they are in fact real wood. The 99 Classics also use real wood, so they're not like cheaping out with some fake wood or anything like that. You have like a steel spring headband. It's all steel here. You've got these metal bits, these metal brackets here that frankly look really attractive. These metal bushings, is that the word for that? And then of course you've got the grill. I would say it does seem like these fins here are likely some sort of a plastic, but otherwise everything on this unit really feels quite high quality, and you can see even like little details like being able to see the driver through the grill. Like that is above and beyond what most headphones ever try to do. Just really pretty impressive in terms of the build materials. And then it's also got this adjustable suspension strap headband, which I like these a lot. Main reason is that you just never have to worry about your settings getting disrupted, right? If you've ever had like a headphone sized exactly for your head and then you put it down, someone else puts it on, they change the size, and then it's not quite right. It's like getting into a car when someone adjusted the seat. I don't like that. And with this sort of suspension style strap, you don't really have to worry about that. And I guess as we're talking about that, let's go ahead and talk about how this thing feels in terms of comfort, okay? So again, that suspension strap style, I'm a big fan of what it means for the ergonomics of the headphone and just generally what it's like to live with, but I think that actually they've done a really good job with it in terms of the comfort as well. So pressure is very evenly distributed across my head. You don't have any hot spots or anything like that, and the suspension strap is not super highly tensioned, which just means that it's tensioned enough that it's going to hold itself in place, but I don't feel any pressure pulling down on it like I have with some other suspension strap headphones. Apart from that, the sort of left and right clamp factor, I would say, is moderate. It's definitely, I don't think this is going to provide issues or cause issues for anyone that is sensitive to clamp pressure. Generally found it pretty good. The other thing that's really quite good is the spaciousness inside of the ear cups. And I don't know that this is necessarily going to show you too much, but just to give you a sense, like that is a very large ear cup. This is what a human finger looks like inside that ear cup. Not that that's what goes in there, but I can promise you, as my ears are in here, I can basically move this, like my ear is still within the ear cup during all of this motion, just to kind of give you a sense for how roomy it is in there. Even like the depth front to back is also quite roomy. I don't have any issues with my ears touching the back of the ear cup. So generally pretty happy with not just the build materials, but also the comfort. The other thing maybe worth talking about real quick is these pads. These are a velour pad. And if you've tried velour pads on a headphone before, they kind of run the gamut in terms of what they feel like. A lot of the times, frankly, velour pads can be a little bit scratchy, and I would say that these are on the more comfortable side, but after a couple of hours listening to this, it does become a little bit on the scratchy side, so it is somewhat of a limiting factor in terms of the long-term wearability of this, but I don't know. To be honest, overall, I found that the comfort on the set was, frankly, quite great. And then I guess one other thing worth calling out, just in case you weren't already aware, this is an open back headphone, which means that you should not expect anything approaching sound isolation from the outside, right? If you're gonna take this thing on a bus, you're gonna hear everything on the bus. As well, people that are outside are gonna hear what you are listening to as well. That's just what happens with an open back headphone. Most of you guys already know that, but just calling that out for the folks that are maybe showing up here and expecting like a Bluetooth wireless headphone review. And also, I guess worth clarifying, this is not a Bluetooth headphone. Even though I have no cable attached to it currently, you do need to connect a cable to it to hear sound. And what's it sound like? Well, let's talk about that now. Let's start with talking about the sound signature, and then I'll get into what I like, what I don't like, and then we'll talk about the comparisons versus directly the Focal Clear. So, sound signature wise, I would say that the 109 Pro frankly, it falls within the realm of neutral. It does have a little bit of coloration to it, but I think that overall the tonality on this set is very natural and normal sounding. It does have a bit of a mid-bass emphasis to it. You can see that in frequency response graphs, and you can definitely feel that where it has somewhat of a prominent bass. And the bass does, I think, otherwise extend well into the sub-bass frequencies, but mostly what you're likely to hear when you listen to this headphone is a mostly normal sounding headphone with a little bit of bass emphasis and some brightness up top. Okay, it has enough treble energy in this set that I would describe it as somewhat of an aggressive tune, if I'm perfectly honest. So again, despite it having somewhat of a warm low end, really that treble tuning kind of dominates the sound signature of this set. So that's the general sound signature. What do I like about the 109 Pro? Let's talk about it. That tuning that I just described, I would say is the most correct tuning of all the Meze headphones I've heard. Now, I'm putting correct in quotes because I'm not a strict target sort of person, right? My reviews, I'm not looking for target adherency as an objective. But if you are looking at kind of what people generally agree is a neutral sounding headphone, neutral tonality, this is by far the most correctly tuned of the Meze headphones that I've heard. The other thing that I really like about this headphone is a great balance of bass, which maybe is surprisingly reserved from a company that brought us things like the Meze 99 Classics, or even the Lyric, honestly, is a little bit bass emphasized. Here, you do have a bit of a bass, mid-bass bump that gives kick drums a little bit of added presence, but frankly, it's not too much. The sub bass on the set does extend quite satisfying and gives you a nice sense of decay to that bass as well. And just overall, it's a good balance of present bass with zero issues with bloating or smearing or anything like that. It just does not intrude on the frequency response and the tonal balance otherwise. And then also I would just say, like, this is kind of a generic statement, but I think the technical performance on this set is a step up from a lot of like the sub $500 sets that I've been mostly living with until now, frankly. You get very good sense of separation, very solid imaging here on the 109 Pro, which just means that like the positioning of sounds, especially if you're listening to, I've got like some big band like Latin music that has just instruments all over the place, and the 109 Pro really does a good job at positioning them. On top of that, it gives you, I think, a very nice sense of head stage, a wider sense of head stage than average, certainly again for the sub $500 sets. And then I would also say that the 109 Pro indexes really well in sort of this sense of detail, which is again another vague term, but just that sense as you're listening to it, that you are really extracting all of the nuance in the music. So that is what I like about this headphone. But of course, there's going to be some things I don't love about it. So let's talk about those now. So let's talk about the bass real quick, all right? I said that the bass balance in the set is actually really, really good. The bass quality, I would say, is so-so. It's not bad. It's just that the attack on the bass can be a little bit on the soft side. It's just not the most articulate with things like bass lines. It's not bad, again. It's not smeary or anything like that, but the attack definition, it's not quite impressive, I suppose. It is just a way of being picky about it, really, and that is being picky. But frankly, what's not being picky is the treble on this set. I think, honestly, the treble on the 109 Pro is a real problem. I perceive some sort of like mid-treble elevation to it that contributes to what can only really be described as unwanted harshness. It just sounds a little bit harsh, a little bit sharp, and a little bit grating. It can also contribute to a little bit of splashy timbre for things like hi-hats, but more so the issues that I have with the treble in this set is it's just aggressive and grating for long listens. With some tracks, frankly, it can actually be unbearable. With other tracks, it's livable, but unfortunately, the treble really does limit the appeal of this set. Now, that said, I told you I was super biased going into this review, and I was very interested in finding out what would it take for me to get along with that treble. So I actually did a lot of playing around with pad swaps, as well as putting in some damping material inside of the ear cup to try and get it to a place that I liked. Now, I'm not going to review the headphone from the perspective of what it sounds like once I've made changes, but I did want to talk at least a little bit about, is it possible for those changes to have the effect that I want? And I guess also worth calling out is that Meze asked me to burn in this headphone for 70 to 100 hours before arriving at my conclusion. And I'll say I did burn in this headphone. I'm not a big burn-in believer. I did burn in this headphone, and I did not get the difference that I hoped for. But again, I did not give up there. I did try a bunch of different pad swaps. None of the pads in my repertoire had the effect that I wanted. There were a number of pads that were able to cut that treble burn, but they had other negative effects. So I do think that it is possible to find the pad that works with this set. But what I did find that works is these. So I've got a bunch of these just because I like playing around with this stuff, but these are foam discs for an AKG 240 headphone. You can buy these spare parts on the internet for like $5 a pair. And it's just a little foam disc that I insert into the ear pad like that. I've actually got a couple of them that I've trimmed up to fit a little bit better. And with that, it cleans up the treble significantly, okay? It's still on the spicy side, I would say, but it tames it up enough that I can frankly listen to this headphone all day. It retains still that definition, that pluck on the treble, but it dampens the heat. If Meze's motivated to do so, I think that they can they could sort of do this sort of damping with a new pad. Now it's going to come at the expense of potentially covering up that beautiful driver that you see down there. But frankly, I think it is a trade-off worth making. So those are my general thoughts here on the 109 Pro. But again, like I promised, we're going to talk about how this thing compares directly with another headphone. So I'm going to pull it in to frame as I make room on this table. Magic tricks, haha. Here we've got, and man, my table is not quite large enough for this. But here we've got the, of course, Meze 109 Pro, and here we've got the Focal Clear. This is the professional version. I'm told this sounds exactly like the original Clear, so I'm hoping that's true. I'm going to review it as if it's true, but let's talk about this. And then just for good measure, we'll also compare it to the modified 109 Pro, just so you have a good sense for how I think, what sort of potential is in this headphone. Okay, so I guess I'll talk about price first. Again, dynamic driver headphone, open back, $800. Dynamic driver headphone, open back, $900. So very much within the same ballpark. And then the mod is like an extra $5 if you want these AKG 240 phones or K240. Okay, sound signature wise, the 109 Pro, like we just got done talking about, is within the realm of neutral. Pretty even mid-range, a little bit warm, but really it is kind of the aggressive treble that gives it an overall sense of brightness to its tune. The Meze, the Focal Clear, in contrast, is, I would say, also within the realm of neutral. Probably a little bit more midsy, right? So a little bit, well, it's got less mid-bass emphasis and less treble emphasis, which means that the mid-range comes forward a little bit more in the mix. The treble is a little bit tame in comparison and just kind of overall gives you a little bit more of a laid back and just easy sound versus the somewhat aggressive tune here on the 109 Pro. Now, in terms of technicalities, quickly I'll talk about the foam disc. All right, let's again pretend that this is a third headphone. The modded 109 Pro tonality is basically exactly the same. Again, I mentioned it cuts off some of the heat from the treble, but the tonal balance does not really change. It is still exactly as I would describe. It comes more into the technical performance where I think this thing starts to help. Okay, let's talk about the technical stuff. So again, the 109 Pro, I think it does a good sense of separation and a good sense of head stage. Imaging is very, very solid. The bass is present, delineated, and it hits pretty decent. Maybe not the best on attack definition, but you get a nice sense of that bass. And again, it is well delineated, which I like to see. Unfortunately, the treble harshness is just, it is grating, and it is a challenge with this headphone. The Focal Clear, in contrast, I would say is actually next level imaging versus the 109 Pro. I mean, this has very good imaging. The Focal Clear just sounds a little bit more precise with everything. more articulate with its imaging. The bass, I would say, also has a much better defined attack on it, and listening to these things in contrast and comparison is where that lack of attack definition on the 109 Pro can really come across. That's where the Clear really excels. I will say that the bass on the Clear does come across a little bit on the hollow side, like it doesn't quite have that same follow through and fullness that the bass does here on the 109 Pro. So there's a little bit of a trade-off there. But really it is just kind of like really good with nuance and finer details in your music. Again, it's not like overly aggressive in the treble or anything like that, so it's not getting that sense of detail there. It's just this like effortlessness and the way that it deals with that, again, that nuance in music. I think people have referred to it as the dynamics of the headphone. I think that's what people are talking about. For me, the words that come to mind are more just, again, the nuance, the detail, and just that ease. And then let's not forget about the modded 109 Pro. It's basically the same as I described here with the 109 Pro, but minus the heat. All right, you still get. I wanted to say I still think that the Clear excels in the nuance, but this, you get basically all the good stuff of this without that distracting treble. So really, I don't know. With the modification, I think these things trade blows kind of back and forth, and it would be hard for me to pick between the two technically. Without the modification, for me, it's a pretty clear win for the Clear. And now in terms of form factor, again, let's just look at this headphone. Please enjoy it. This is gorgeous. It's also outstanding fit. I love the auto-adjusting headband. I love really everything about the build of this headphone. I think I even forgot to mention it, but it's not even an especially heavy headphone. It's under 400 grams, which is pretty nice. The Clear, I think it looks pretty good, but maybe less inspiring. Of course, it's going to be up to one's personal aesthetic choices, but I think it's maybe, I don't know. It's a little perfunctory, and the red and black color scheme, I don't hate it, but I would say that is not my favorite. I would also say that Focal headphones, I always feel like they feel a little bit brittle. I don't know, something to do with their headbands, and they make kind of like a creaking noise or something like that. But I don't know, being pretty picky generally. This is a very well-built headphone, very comfortable to wear. Just doesn't quite inspire me the way that the 109 does. And then the build quality of this AKG K240 pad. Okay, I'm not going to talk about the build quality of the pad, and obviously the build quality of this thing with the pad in it is not really any different. The only thing worth calling out though is that when you have this pad in there, you do have to be a little bit careful that it doesn't get unseated or bunched up or anything like that. So it does slightly detract from the otherwise really quite fine build quality here on the 109 Pro. So those are my thoughts here on the Meze 109 Pro, but I do have to give it a score. So out of 5 stars, look, I really want to love this headphone. Like a lot of other Meze's headphones, I want to love them more than I end up really loving them. That said, I was able to get it to a spot that I can enjoy this quite a bit. So I'll give it 3 stars out of 5. That's the score without the modification. With the modification, you can make up your own mind about how you think that should adjust the score. But I don't know. I'd really like to see Meze iterate on the pad design on this, because again, I'm confident that a pad can address those treble issues. Will Meze do it? I don't know. But if you're interested in checking out the Meze 109 Pro, I of course do have a link in the description down below. And while you're down there, if you enjoyed this review, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, ding the YouTube bell, and I'll see you on the next super review, unless you're here live, in which case, hang out and let's talk about some headphones while I drink some tea.